Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Why You Need a Completely Integrated Chargeback Solution, hosted by APTARE. To get things started, I wanted to review the agenda with everyone. First, I'll introduce the speakers, then discuss why chargeback matters, followed by an overview of current trends in IT that we're seeing at APTARE. Finally, we'll present a summary of a case study of a Fortune 500 global enterprise that has moved from a very manual process around chargeback to a fully integrated chargeback solution and review the benefits received as a result of this new process. So they've gone through this process, and it's a really good case study we wanted to share with you. During the presentation, we will present a few polling questions on the topics to the audience, and we appreciate your response. This is really useful data for us just to understand the audience and where you're at relative to some of the data we're finding. So it's great feedback for us to hear from you. And again, we appreciate your responses as we go through. There's 8 polling questions during the course of this webinar. So with that, let me introduce today's speakers. I'm Walt Duflock, the Vice President of Marketing at APTARE. And joining me today is Greg Trikoris, Senior Sales Engineer at APTARE. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Walt. Hello, everybody.
So Greg's got a ton of experience in this area from helping APTARE clients both design and implement integrated chargeback. He'll be sharing some of the best practices and learnings from helping these clients migrate from all the manual processes that are frequently in play to an integrated and automatic chargeback solution. My experience comes from watching the industry trends that are driving solutions like integrated chargeback and determining the key benefits and results customers have received, and then, of course, as the marketing guy, sharing those with APTARE customers, partners, and prospects. So let's start with a discussion of why chargeback is needed. Much of the need comes from the growing complexity that's facing all IT departments today, and it's frequently caused by circumstances that are well outside your building and in many cases well outside of your direct control. First, the explosion of data enterprises are being asked to manage continues to grow and in many cases even accelerate. The growth rates vary from 20 to 40 to 30 to 50% annually in data growth among enterprises, depending on which analyst you ask and when they're answering. But it's easy to say that they're clearly growing and continuing to grow for a lot of very different reasons. More applications, more videos, more social media has to all be stored, more PowerPoint decks on the latest strategies, and of course, growth of mobile devices and bring your own device policies that require you as the IT department to help users manage mobile data in conjunction with enterprise data. So that's the first big factor, the data explosion. Secondly, an increasing number of global regulations that impose compliance requirements around which data has to be kept, how you keep it secure, where you have to keep it, on-site, off-site, etc., how long you have to keep it. So all this data growth has added to it a storage multiplier for the duplicate copies that are kept on replication devices, on tapes, frequently off-site. And long story short, in a D2D to T world, for every terabyte of data that's created, frequently 2 to 3 terabytes are required to be stored and managed. So the data explosion is part of it. You then have to replicate it and store it a couple of times. Add to this complexity multiple suppliers for things like storage and backup, oftentimes, again, outside your control through company acquisitions. And the expectation is that you can keep track of all types of devices in a consistent way, even though in a lot of cases you're using numerous inconsistent tools from the independent device managers. That is a big ask. Finally, on top of all these trends that have been in place and increasing the difficulty of the IT world the last 10 plus years, you add a layer that creates a lack of visibility and accountability as business units are now forcing IT on a daily basis to evaluate service provider offerings and possible cloud migrations. The reality is this may be the most challenging item on this screen because of how it enables the business units to make the data explosion problem far more difficult to manage. And we'll walk through that as we get through the slides. So the use of cloud services is definitely growing. I'm sure all of you folks on the webinar are seeing that. We took some data from the 2015 State of the Cloud survey conducted by RightScale. They've done this for a couple years now. And in this case, they got data from 900 IT professionals on cloud adoption trends and how it's playing out in enterprises. And over 300 responses were from enterprises with over 1,000 employees. We found the findings really interesting, and they complement a lot of the key analyst findings related to cloud adoption. So we've shared them here. First, cloud in some form is becoming a given at most enterprises, and 93% of respondents are either already running or experimenting and in a lab with infrastructure as a service offerings. So you can see this is a heavy use opportunity in a lot of enterprises. And again, if they're not already running it, they are heading that direction in most cases. In many cases, hybrid cloud is the preferred strategy, and in many, if not all cases, the business units inside the enterprise are driving this change. And one of the most common reasons that business units are driving this is to create self-service capabilities for those business unit owners who want the ability to request IT resources that they need and get them automatically assigned and provisioned. So the self-service objective, and Greg will speak to this as well, is a huge driver of this activity. Second, private clouds leads in large enterprise workloads. So if you look at the respondents from the survey, 63% of respondents are using private cloud, and 22% are running at least 1,000 or more VMs in the private cloud. So while a lot of publicity around public cloud, Amazon AWS solutions, and similar ones lead the way for SMBs, for large enterprise, private cloud is at this point a better alternative for the enterprise-sized workloads. And we believe in part this is because of the increased control that's available, among other factors. So for large enterprises, private cloud is clearly at this point leading the way. Now, an interesting point that came out of the study was, even with all the movement to cloud that's already taken place, there is still significant headroom for enterprises to move more applications to the cloud. RightScale found that 68% of the respondents are currently running less than 1/5 of their applications in the cloud, and very likely that over time, some to most of the remaining 80% of the applications will be candidates for cloud. So even with all this migration, still less than 20% running in the cloud. A supporting data point is that 55% of respondents report that a significant portion of their application portfolio is already built in a way that's cloud-friendly, but is not yet implemented into any cloud solution. So whether intentional or not, many of the apps that haven't moved are cloud-friendly and can be moved. It's a prioritization issue, and again, the IT groups and the business units collaborate on this to figure out which apps should move first and how that happens. And in some cases, it may not be the production versions of applications. It may be the QA, testing, development, sandbox environments that are the most likely to move, and they'll be evaluated before production for possible moves, even if production never gets to be a good candidate for the cloud. So there's different parts of the application infrastructure that are moving in some cases. Now, in terms of how private clouds are implemented, the overwhelming choice is to include and roll out a self-service portal. I mentioned a minute ago, that's one of the driving forces for the business units making these requests is, can I have a self-service portal to request this stuff? So 43% of respondents already offer a self-service portal, and equally important, 41% more of the respondents plan to offer self-service portal as an option for end users. And this is where we think the challenge comes with rolling out a private cloud. When it comes with a self-service portal, and that's going to be 80% or more of them in an environment where 93% are already doing something in this space, and the business units start using the self-service portal at an increasing rate, they will then make more requests, get them fulfilled more quickly, and suddenly you're going to have more IT infrastructure to manage because you enabled the self-service capability. So it's ironic that by enabling this, you create more of a problem because you give them the capability to make self-service requests. No surprise, they do it at scale and more quickly, and you're then forced to manage ever more stuff from the business unit requests. And so this is where the IT group and the business units can get in direct conflict, and increase economics via efficiency on the IT side bumps into I want to do more on the business unit side. And that brings me to the final point from the right scale results that we'll share. While the business units are frequently driving cloud and will help set priorities, in 62% of the cases, it's been established that IT controls the majority of the cloud spending decisions. And we think that this is exactly why, the way that it should be. This is what's going to cause the need for chargeback, because IT is being asked to control the cost and manage the entire process, and at the same time the business units are being told, go build new stuff, go figure out where new opportunities are at. And so without a tool to help control the usage of the self-service portal, the requests will just keep coming in. But if you can roll out a chargeback solution and put it in place, the requests then tie to a back-end process that has the resources used tied back to the application and the business unit group using them, which then helps discourage overuse of resources without some solid business justification. In short, chargeback helps balance the business unit interest in driving new programs with the IT interest in managing infrastructure costs. So goals get a lot more aligned. And with that, I want to bring in a few poll questions to get the audience feedback. So the first question is, what is your organization's current cloud usage? You see there are 4 choices there. Are you actively using cloud for multiple applications? Are you actively evaluating cloud for multiple applications? Are you not pursuing cloud at this time, or are you unsure? So we'll give everyone just a few seconds to respond. Okay, looks like our responses are in. We will close that out and share the results. So long story short, 29% of you are actively using, 38% actively evaluating, 10% not pursuing at this time, and 24% not sure. Second question, we published that out now, so please give us some responses on this. What type of cloud solution is or do you expect to be most prevalent at your organization? Very interested to see where this one plays out given what we saw from the survey. Public cloud, the AWS, Azure, Google of the world. Private cloud, hybrid cloud, or not sure. And there's actually a pretty decent debate about private cloud or hybrid cloud among the analyst community, and there's differing points of view on this one. So this data is going to be really interesting to see where this crowd falls. Okay, thank you for the answers. We will close that poll and share the results out with everybody. So 10% public cloud, very interesting. And then the big number I'm interested in is 43% private, 33% hybrid, and 14% not sure. So at least in this audience, private cloud wins a slight edge over hybrid. So we'll see how that plays out moving forward. And looking forward to sharing these results. We've got blogs and social posts that we're doing on this stuff, so we will definitely be watching this space with interest for all the reasons we've been talking about. Now, third question, and again, thank you for the responses. How is your organization using self-service portal? I've already rolled out and I'm using one, planning to roll out and use one, no plan to roll out and use one, or not sure. And don't worry, your answers are completely anonymous. we will not publish out anything on an individual basis. But I'm sure many of you are asking, with this self-service portal, my goodness, I shouldn't have done that. No, you absolutely should do it. Right thing for the business unit. Again, chargeback is the key to getting it managed on the cost side. All right, last couple answers trickling in. Great. So we'll close and publish this out. And as you look at those results, interesting, a tie. So a tie between already rolled out and using a self-service portal, 28%. Same percentage, 28% planning to roll out and use one. So 28% already, 28% planning, over half. 6% have no plan to roll out, and 39% not sure. And last poll question for this set, question 4 is launched. How is your organization using Chargeback? Already using it to charge back for IT resources, planning to use it, no plans to use it, not sure. And again, this will be interested based on where other answers have come in as well. All right, answers still coming in. About 3 more seconds. Great. So we'll close this and publish it out. So the quick summary, 38% already using it to charge back for IT. Planning to use it, 43%. No plans to use it, 5%. And 14% not sure. So again, how are you using Chargeback? Pretty impressive. Basically 81% of you are either already using it or planning to use it. So that's a great percentage. So thank you for the survey responses. Those are really helpful, great data. And now I want to come back to the slide deck and bring in Greg to talk about some of the private clouds trends he's been seeing, as obviously he's spending a lot of time in enterprise data center environments with our customers and partners working on the strategies to help make this happen. So Greg, take it away with slide 5.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Walt. Hi, everybody. So cloud continues to be a top initiative amongst our client base, at least from the field perspective. With regards to the private cloud, most of the feedback that I've received thus far has been very positive. So from a service delivery perspective, we're definitely seeing that the private cloud has been successful in improving the overall quality of IT service delivery. Like certainly from an infrastructure provisioning perspective, the durations for provisioning have been significantly reduced. So VMs, capacity, compute resources are now being delivered in minutes as opposed to weeks, or in some cases as long as a month. I mean, we used to deal with that all the time when we'd ask for application infrastructure. Sometimes the lag time could be, several weeks to get a server. That has been significantly reduced. There's also been an increase in elasticity and flexibility for IT resources. So the ability to dynamically scale up and down resources like memory and CPU, the number of machines, different applications like database applications, all have improved dramatically. Another trend we're hearing is there's been some reduction in operational expenditures associated with the infrastructure being provisioned from that platform. Now, this is primarily due to the standardization, consolidation of the resources on the back end, and the automation of the platform. So the fact that they have standardized images that they're now supporting as opposed to ad hoc deployments has somewhat reduced some of the operational expenditures. Now, for the organizations that have done the transition to the cloud without integrating a metering or a chargeback system, there have been some unintended consequences of these enhancements. And what we're hearing about is explosive growth in VM provisioning and storage allocations that accompany the self-service portal. That, coupled with the lack of accountability and the visibility of the provisioned infrastructure, is somewhat exacerbating an already difficult problem with regards to infrastructure that's not being accounted for, not being charged back to the line of businesses. And those last 2 points are directly attributed to the failure of organizations to integrate a metering solution or a chargeback system with their cloud platform when they roll it out. So from what we're seeing, it's imperative that that particular system is coupled with a self-service provisioning platform. So we can move on to the next slide there. So, whether you're implementing a chargeback system to integrate with an automated provisioning platform with like the cloud, or in, say, a service provider model, or whether it's just a traditional IT organization that's trying to get a handle on their expenditures, there are a combination of different challenges that an organization struggle with in order to develop a chargeback strategy. And a lot of these aren't technical. A lot of these are organizational challenges within an enterprise. Limited cooperation from the line of business to provide transparency. So it's not always in the best interest of the line of business to really, cooperate with a chargeback policy. Right now, infrastructure they're getting it as they need it. They're not paying for it. So they may not be cooperative about being held accountable for it. We find that any kind of a chargeback system implementation is definitely benefited from executive sponsorship. Project that has executive sponsorship to make sure that we can break down those organizational barriers. The inability to charge back certain infrastructure. So we see that there's a lot of metadata around the infrastructure spread out across an organization. Getting that associated can be a real challenge for different organizations. I'm going to talk to that in the next slide, because that is a key, obviously. You need to know who to hold accountable for the infrastructure consumption. The lack of visibility into the infrastructure. In these large, complex environments, in these heterogeneous environments, it's really difficult to have a comprehensive view of all your IT infrastructure. Whether it's from merger and acquisitions, there are complex environments, and trying to rely upon vendor tools to do it is very complicated, and usually it's very siloed. And then there's how do I calculate the cost for the different components, right? There's the VMs and the administration and powers and facilities and security and networking and all the operational administration costs and all those things. How do you calculate what you want to charge back your various business units? One of the things I've been hearing, especially from the service providers, is that they usually use the lowest possible cost they can get away with. They're concerned about organizations pushing, or I should say business units, pushing back on these bills. So they'll put together whatever they feel that they can really get away with charging. So it's important that whatever system is put in place is auditable, it's accurate, and it's flexible, which is key, and scalable. Some of the other challenges that we're hearing, do you want to use an allocation or a utilization pricing model? So allocation is by far, or at least from my perspective, allocation is by far the most common. In the service provider market, we do hear some being held to a utilization model, which is more of a level of effort in order to determine that. Infrastructure challenges themselves, just the whole nature of virtualization, shared infrastructure, different performance tiers. I hear a lot about organizations struggling with how to deal with depreciated infrastructure. So all these things really need to come into consideration when you're developing a strategy. And the bottom line is the flexibility of the tool is important. You need to have a lot of different mechanisms to deal with all these different permutations. So we can move on, Walt, to the next slide. Great, thank you. So how do we address these challenges? So I think APTARE really is uniquely positioned for this. We're a multi-tenant solution, which adds a lot of benefit, especially to large organizations who have subsidiaries or service providers. So the first step and the prerequisite to any kind of a chargeback strategy is visibility to the infrastructure. So our collection process, we dynamically capture infrastructure updates and allocations within the environment. And then obviously the next step is to assign some kind of ownership to that, or some kind of association with a business object, whether it be a cost center, an application, a line of business. And we really provide a lot of tools around this, a lot of methods by which we can associate the infrastructure within your data center with the various business objects that you have and that you need to associate it with. And I think the next slide will actually talk to that a little more. And then we have the ability to either monetize the infrastructure in our tool. So in other words, we can generate a bill and put a currency next to it. Or what also we do quite often is we simply are feeding raw data to an external billing system, whereby we're just providing usage statistics, right? And it becomes part of a metric into a larger billing system. And I'll say that they're both common methods. I don't know which one really wins out and which one's more commonly used. They're both used quite often, at least from my perspective. So I think we can move on to the next slide. So, as I said in the previous slide, this is really the key, is aligning the infrastructure with the business objects. So we do have a number of different ways to do this. And then this slide, the next, I think we'll talk to that. I can't tell you how many organizations I speak with who have a CMDB or some kind of an asset management database that holds a part of this. And whenever we ask them, and this is always our follow-up question to this, is how accurate is it? The numbers are always 20 to 30% or 40% accurate. So what we've done is we've kind of created a lot of different tools to kind of marry this infrastructure and association information from different sources. Direct database integration is certainly a great option. So we can set up ETL jobs, or we can use JDBC or ODBC to grab metadata about the infrastructure that we're collecting from various sources. They can be done manually through CSV load scripts, and those can be automated. Or we can mount external tables. So we have a lot of flexibility from our database perspective to figure out ways of getting this information into the tool. I think we can go to the next one. So this is just a continuation. So we have two real methods of getting the ownership information in there, and part of it is either associating an attribute, and again, that could be coming from an external data source. We could potentially be using different mechanisms for parsing this out of host names, for other naming conventions to try to extract location codes, cost centers, application names, line of business names, so that we can maintain the relationship between infrastructure and the entity that you need to charge back or you need to hold accountable for the consumption of storage. And then, of course, grouping. We have a whole bunch of grouping mechanisms within our application that help you do this as well. All this stuff can be programmatically done, or it can be done manually, however you want to do it. But the bottom line is, APTARE comes with a lot of flexibility with marrying this data together. And so this particular slide is just an illustration, and what it's basically showing is it's really, to go back and reconcile the infrastructure that you already have provisioned is one aspect, but moving forward, as you get these provisioning requests that come in, it's really important to incorporate us or integrate us into the process, so that as new infrastructure is requested and is provisioned out, that the metadata, in other words, ownership information, application information, cost center codes or general ledger codes, are then inserted into our database. I think there's a graphic on here, an animation on here, right? Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
So, no problem. There's actually another one if you hit it again. But so, yeah, so as the infrastructure is actually provisioned, we need to capture this information so we can maintain it. Because it's like, it's one thing to go out there and actually associate all the stuff that's already been provisioned, but you need to make sure that as new infrastructure is provisioned, you're maintaining this so that your chargeback model continues to be accurate. So I think that's what I have to say so far. Walt?
That's great. No, great overview, Greg. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
And with that, we want to transition over to sharing with the audience a customer case study around chargeback. And this is, we think, a really typical story of what a lot of you are running into, and a really great example of how this can turn into a really big win for customers and for us. So this is a Fortune 500 enterprise. It's a global enterprise, large pharmaceutical company. We can't share the name of the customer yet, but we think that their environment looks a lot like many of yours. There's over 100 petabytes of multi-vendor storage, usual suspects, right? EMC, HDS, IBM NetApp, so complex, heterogeneous from the start. There's 5,000 backup clients, well over 5,000, TSM, Avamar, Data Domain being three of the main players there. There's over 1,000 servers, and it's both physical and virtual, heavy virtualized environment with VMware as the VM tool of choice. 2 primary data centers with over 15, and actually I think since this we found that it's potentially over 20 remote sites. And the good news is, as we walk through this webinar, Greg has actually been a major part of this effort, so he can happily answer questions you guys have. If this looks like your environment, you have questions about how and what. So the specific problem they were running into for the environment was around billing process. The process they were using for getting the data collected across the entire environment, highly manual. You heard Greg walked through a lot of the variables a minute ago. This is tough stuff to get all into one place, and it's coming from a lot of different places. Each vendor's got their own tool, and in some cases they don't collect together, work together, play together nicely, and it takes time to make that happen. In this case, from a data collection perspective, it was taking the customer over 200 hours a month to manually get all the data and put it into spreadsheets and pull it into one somewhat cohesive aggregate data set. The process was not just relying on manual spreadsheets, but relying on 10-year-old scripting technologies that were a big part of the data collection. And as you can imagine, with 10-year-old scripting technologies, the script developers had either been promoted, moved on to other groups, or to other companies, even worse, couldn't find them then. So there was not a lot of expertise left in the building to maintain and improve the scripts, as the data center environment was constantly changing because of the data growth and the other stuff we've talked about already. So the best available solution for the company in this case was to pay for professional services from the scripting tool vendor for both maintenance and updating of the scripts. Obviously, this is expensive. Sometimes it's difficult to coordinate because you've got a third party and schedules to line up. And the last problem was that in spite of all the manual work, in spite of all the costly processes to get the data collected and put together, turns out the data that was eventually delivered to the billing system, which in this case was SAP, for Chargeback was both incomplete and inaccurate. So they were not able to get the full set of data. They were not able to get the right data through all these mechanics to try and get the data put together. So the solution was an integrated chargeback solution. And what APTARE delivered went end-to-end to really fit the customer's environment very effectively. As you've already seen, we've got complete collection capabilities around backup, storage, and virtualization. So step 1 is collect all the data that we can. Step 2 is then integrate that data set with an asset management tool. And in this case, it was HP Asset Manager. And then step 3 is once the data is collected and integrated, you can deliver custom analytics right to the stakeholders on demand. So again, that's all of the APTARE technology piece working together to get the data collected, the data integrated, and put the right information in front of the right folks when they need it. Now from the customer side, the benefits were significant. First, the integration resulted in a completely automated process that delivered the data that was collected and integrated directly into the SAP billing system. This is obviously a big win. As part of that, 2 related big wins. The manual collection processes that took 200 hours a month, eliminated, no longer required. The third-party maintenance and updates to the legacy scripting environment, also eliminated, no longer required. And finally, the schedule reports that are now in place, those custom analytics, require less maintenance and are less error prone and get pushed right out to the right folks on the business side. So really big win for the customer and really big transition from manual process to automated process, and just a great result on all sides. But as we like to say, don't just take our word for it. Here's what the customer had to say. This is from an email the customer sent. It's a few months back now, but just to give you a feel for the customer's response to this, I can't say it enough. They were very impressed by the project team and their work to figure and value in future enhancements and how to connect the two systems and get them connected. Obviously, clearly a good idea. And the goal at the time, which has been implemented, is that automated schedule so that no manual intervention is required, which is what the customer wanted. They did not want to have to do the manual data collection and aggregation and all of this in bits and pieces. They wanted it to just work and just push it through to the billing environment. That was the objective, not have to touch it on the way through. So in terms of the project team, exceeded expectations, exceeded project milestones, again, a very positive result for the team, the customer, and the APTARE team. So this is the email we'd all love to get. And again, at this point, can't tell you who the name is behind this, but working on fixing that with obviously some processes to get that to happen, working with the customer. So that's the customer side of it. That's what they had to say about it. With that, I wanted to open the second set of polling questions up, get the audience feedback. So I've launched the first polling question out, and again, we could use your help to get some good data on this. First question on this one is, how does the case study environment compare to yours? Is it very similar, complex, heterogeneous, multi-vendor environment? Is it similar, complex, but less vendors? Is it not similar, we're smaller than that? Or is it not similar, we use one vendor for these products, or are you not sure? So thank you for the responses. Give everyone just a couple seconds to weigh in on this. Very interesting. Lot of votes on our top two, interestingly enough. Okay, looks like the votes have trickled in. We'll give you 3 seconds. Any last minute voters? And we will close it out and publish the results. 37% very similar. So over a third of you, this looks like you, and that completely makes sense. 21% similar, possibly fewer vendors, also makes sense, depending on the rate of mergers and acquisition, depending on the rate of technology refreshes. Sometimes companies easily get along with fewer vendors than in this example. 11% not similar based on size, and 5% not similar, we use one vendor, which does happen, obviously in some cases for different reasons, and 26% not sure. So again, if I look at the numbers here, high level, 58% say yes, very complex environment, very typical, some with fewer vendors and some with a lot of vendors. So in short, I would say that tells me the audience at this webinar is very appropriate for this content, and thank you for those answers. Next question, just a yes or no or a not sure. Does your organization currently maintain a repository of this information? Yes, no, or not sure. Just trying to figure out how many folks are actually keeping track of this stuff and where. Greg mentioned some of the options. Curious to see how this audience lines up.
We should have had another column there for yes, but not accurate.
Right. It's true. A fourth choice. That's a good call on the polling question response. All right. Looks like most of our voters have trickled in. Last couple seconds. And Greg's right. We can't break them up into yes, but on the yes, no, not sure, 3/4 yes, 1/4 no and not sure, with the overwhelming majority of that in the not sure category. So great news. You folks do keep track of this stuff and have it in a place where you can get to it. That's obviously really the first step in a lot of ways. And then finally, sorry, 2 left. Is your organization currently able to identify which applications and business units are currently using IT infrastructure? So if you were asked or are being asked to share this out on a business unit or application level, can you do that? And again, as we move to a world of ever-growing cloud use and ever-growing self-service portals, this is where we think the real requirements are going to be. You're going to have to push this stuff back out on a usage-based model to the users and get them smart about how much they're really using and making them pick up that cost. All right, a couple last seconds to track down any stragglers on the yes, no, not sure, and we will publish that out. So 2/3, 65% yes, you can absolutely charge back based on business unit application. That's great to see. That is a nice percentage. Probably a little, I don't know, Greg, probably surprisingly high. But
yeah, no, that's very good.
Yeah, so great data. 15% no, hopefully a no comment not yet, and 20% not sure. And final poll question for today, having seen the content, Greg and I are just curious, do you see the benefits of an integration like this and where it could help you? Yes, no, not sure. And hopefully we get a few yeses on this one. So give you folks a couple minutes to, there we go, voting totals are picking right up. All right, so we'll close that out. So the good news is for 85% of you, this was a good use of your time. For the other 15%, hopefully you learned a few things in spite of that answer. We hope so. So we will push that response back out. Thank you for the answers. Those are really helpful. We appreciate you guys taking the time to give us some answers on that. And with that, we just want to close with a quick APTARE at a glance slide. Again, we've talked a lot about chargeback and what's driving the need for chargeback. We think that cloud is clearly one of the biggest drivers. So just the context behind us, APTARE at a glance, we like to say that APTARE provides enterprises with truth in storage by offering that top line, predictive analytics for all of your data, because you need to be able to take control of the explosive growth. We talked about the data growth and how self-service provisioning is only accelerating that. We can help, and you've heard some of that today. We provide a visibility and insight platform for chargeback, as you've seen, and compliance. Again, related set of technologies pointing in a slightly different direction. And our customer base is over 1,100, with 1/3 of the Fortune 100 and 40% of the large global finance firms on board. We've talked a lot about our support for many different vendors and products. You can see a sampling in the graphic at the bottom. It's all the normal enterprise names you would expect to see that we support. And we've been doing this for a while, so we've got a lot of subsystems that we support in our environment and platform. If you've got questions, want to dive deeper, want to follow up, please reach out to one of us. You see my contact information there. It's just walt.duflock@APTARE, and that's my mobile number. Feel free to reach out. I am on the West Coast, so time zone sensitivity if you do call, but please call. And Greg is on the East Coast, and I forgot to track down his mobile number, so you have his email. And the website, of course, www.aptare.com. So I have not seen any questions in the chat window. If you folks have any chat questions, now would be a great last-minute time to throw them in, and we can certainly address them. Otherwise, we will wrap this up and say thank you for attending, and hope everyone has a great day.